Welcome to episode 14 of Flag Stays Down podcast. Tonight, man, we're on a run here. We got a full cast. Myself, Andy, we got Parker and Matt in the house. How are you guys doing? First weekend in December.
It was very December-y. We previewed this last week and didn't realize it was going to take the first weekend to get into the fun of this. So I've got a bourbon ready to go. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It was a rough week where I think bourbon is mandatory at this point. So I think we're all kind of feeling the same way. Collins?
But the good news about December is that you can mix your bourbon with eggnog. So I'm good.
Oh boy.
So, let's just get right into it. We have definitely a lot of talking points for tonight. But just a real quick rundown on the matches of the week. First, we had 2-1 victory at Watford in midweek. Mason Mount scoring in the 30th. Emmanuel Dennis scores in the 44th. And then Hakim Ziyech with the winner in the 72nd. Saturday, man, those 6:30 games are killers. 3-2 loss at West Ham. Drop out of top place in the Premier League. Thiago Silva, Mason Mount on the score sheet for Chelsea. Mancini, Bowen, and Masuaku. Does that sound right? Yeah. All right. for West Ham. It was an interesting week, and I'm just going to leave this as kind of an open question to you guys. I don't want to lead you guys anyways, but I am genuinely interested to hear what your thoughts were on this, again, interesting week.
I don't know. It's left me with a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. And the problem is we have so many questions after this where, looking at our season and everything under Tuchel, we never really had a lot of questions about our team. And now it kind of almost makes you think, like, are we as good as we thought we were? Or were we just playing ridiculous football for, 6 months? It's tough. It's kind of putting a lot of things in perspective. Obviously, the injuries that we've had definitely hurts, and I think it's very noticeable on the pitch. Trying to make different things work with what we have, but at the same time, everybody's been playing under this system for at least 6 months. They know what to do or what's at least expected of them, and I think that there are a lot of individuals that are not living up to that expectation, and I think that's really hurting us as a whole.
My quick takeaway from the weekend, Collins, it was interesting for me because I thought after watching both of their matches, I thought sort of during the middle of both of them, they were both going to end in draws. I didn't think we were going to come up with the winner against Watford. It didn't feel like we sort of had it, and it felt like it was going to draw 1-1. And then when we were at 2-2 with West Ham, I did not expect us to concede. I don't think anybody in the stadium expected that ball to go in when it left his foot. So it was a weird weekend from that standpoint. Definitely not used to seeing Chelsea concede 3 goals in an afternoon. That was jarring, a bit upsetting, and definitely something I'm not used to. I guess we can take that for granted a little bit because our defense has been pretty locked down, but for the longest time, our stats were having conceded from open play on the road. And then now we don't have any of those sort of milestones to lean back on. And now we just have to grind it out. I thought the boys played all right for the general sense of it. But definitely some lacking performances from some key people, which we'll get into later in this episode. But definitely don't feel good. And Matt, you make a good point. Like, how good is this team? Are we top 4? Are we top 2? Or are we out of the top 4? And can some of our lacking qualities be exposed by teams in the back half of the season? So I've got a whole lot of questions to ask too, and it's going to be a December to see how this all plays out. We've got plenty of matches to watch. So what do you think, Collins? What's your take?
The Watford game I was hoping was just kind of a one-off. That it was a weird game. There's the 25-minute stoppage. And, thank God that the fan is, at the hospital in good or decent condition. But just, the constant Watford pressure in that match, the I don't know, the seemingly lack of any kind of intensity out of Chelsea in that match. And I honestly, what it seems like to me is that whole next man up mentality has gone away, that it's gotten to some people's heads, or, in the case of Saul, has not gotten to his head. It just kind of seems like things are starting to regress back to the norm. And unfortunately, with Chelsea, this is an annual thing come December. And I was like to really wait until the end of the month for this to happen at least. But no, it's December. It's snowing here in Milwaukee, and Chelsea losing is here. So, but Parker, you did talk about conceding 3 goals, and there was a lot of debate. And actually, before I do this, shout out to Parker for giving the idea for the man of the "Get the Fuck Out of Here" award. So, second week running on this. Eduoard Mendy is your winner this week. There was quite a bit of blame to go around on Eduoard Mendy after that 3-2 loss against West Ham. I've seen some people in support of him. I've seen a lot of people very against Mendy's performance. Matt, what did you make of it?
Just because we're potting, I have to throw this out there. That back pass from Jorginho was shit. He didn't set up Mendy well at all. So, and that would be his second big mistake in 2 matches. So he's not off the hook either. But I mean, we've seen this before out of Mendy. We know he's not a very decisive keeper. We know that. We know he's constantly trying to play out of the back rather than, when he's in pressure, just clear it. It's just something that I still think he's kind of growing into that. He's not fully confident in, I think, his abilities and what he can do. I think he's focusing more on trying to play Tuchel's system than knowing when to just boot it and reset and let your defense kind of take over things. That being said, we can talk about the 3rd goal. We could probably make a whole separate pod on that 3rd goal for West Ham. It was a cross. He was playing the cross. Masuaku just hit the worst contacted hit of his life that ended up being a goal. Near post knuckler that was meant to be a curling cross. It's a tough ball. Everybody expects it to come into the box, but then it doesn't, and it catches Mendy kind of flat-footed, as it would for, us who play volleyball. If you just kind of see something very kind of off the cuff and you're like, wait, what was that? And then you kind of have that little bit of a delay, and then something just kind of crazy happens. I think that was the situation. So I'm a little bit lighter on him on that 3rd goal, but the 1st goal, again, that Jorginho back pass, not the greatest, especially when you have a very indecisive keeper. But at the same time, Mendy needs to just get rid of that ball. It's something that is, I think, pretty fundamental and elementary, and it's frustrating to see him struggle with that side of the game.
Matt, that's what made me such a good volleyball player back in the day, was I made such poor contact when I hit the ball that no one knew where the hell it was going to go, not even me. And so when you hit a ball with topspin, you know exactly what it's going to do. When you hit it like me, anyone's best guess is where it's going to go.
If you don't know where it's going to go, neither do they.
Did anyone else get Cisse vibes with that goal a little bit, where it was kind of like this swirly whirly cross that turns into a goal that Czech got fooled on, 8 years ago or whatever that was?
I remember that goal. Yeah.
I know. I remember that game live, man. I was just like, what in the absolute hell was that? It just, no one expects it to go in. What's unfortunate about soccer is that shows up as a goal and not just a point like in volleyball, but it's just one of those, weird, quirky things. Man, that first goal was so tough to stomach. The pass was garbage, and then Mendy's, touch, and then it just was all bad. And he got it all wrong. He knows it. Everyone knows it. The other thing that I've been upset about with Mendy is just his distribution from the back. it seems like I wouldn't trade him for anyone because he makes up for it with his shot stopping ability. And I like that better than distribution. I'd rather have a keeper who stops shots. The other thing I need him to step up with, and if this isn't just one game, obviously, but he hasn't saved a penalty in quite some time. I think he needs to be better at it. I don't know exactly why. Like Kepa is so much better at penalty saving than he is, but for whatever reason he is, and I don't know. I just I need to see him save one because I haven't seen him save one in quite some time. So yeah, man, it was tough. I know. I think my comment in the group text was his worst performance in a Chelsea shirt. Not all of his fault. Not all blame goes to him. You can't blame one player for a loss like this, but definitely his worst performance. And I think that it showed.
Yeah, and I think it's 2 matches in a row. The goal he conceded against Watford was one that 6 months ago. Again, I think he saves. And we touched on the back pass and Jorginho and all that. I don't want to rehash what you guys have already said. You guys have covered it really well. But I do real briefly want to touch on that mishit, the cross shot. Yes, Mendy was playing the cross. Yes, that's what he should have done because that's what it was. The player acknowledged that it was supposed to be a cross. Like everybody on the pitch thought it was a cross. But just like with his distribution, his reaction times were off against West Ham. You could see from the moment the ball was contacted, it was, probably, that ball was in the air for 4 or 5 seconds, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Mendy was standing at the far post, looking at the defenders for probably 1.5 seconds of that. Just like in volleyball, in baseball, in football, you got to have peripheral vision. You got to be looking around. So even if you're tracking your defenders, you should still have a general idea of where that ball is out of the corner of your eye. And it looks like he had no idea until the very last second. I think Mendy absolutely could have got a touch on that ball. In fact, I think he did. I think he could have got a better touch on that ball. And so I put probably about 50% of the blame to him on that goal.
The other thing I was just going to bring up just very quickly, Matt, sorry. He did get beat earlier in the match as well, that Silva cleared off the line. When you said reaction time, that was the first thing I thought, just because he did get beat. He got smoked again, but Silva cleared the line. So something I haven't seen out of him recently either.
So I know that we have been talking about Mendy as arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the world, certainly in 2021. This is his first stretch, if we even call it that, of not great performances. Is this a time to, kind of ring a panic button? Is it time to consider, maybe having Kepa start, especially in this hectic December with all the matches that we have? Because we have to keep in mind, Mendy's going to be gone for AFCON. Is this maybe a time where we start seeing Kepa a little bit more to kind of transition that role? And then do we end up in, February, March with a number one keeper debate, and who's actually going to pull that number one spot?
I think that's a solid idea. I mean, again, we talked about it last week, the fixture congestion, and just like with Marcus Alonso, I think you could certainly hide players. You can certainly rotate players. We've got a couple cup matches, so even if you didn't want to start Kepa in the league, you've got Champions League this week. You've got Carabao Cup at the end of the month. But I think honestly, putting Kepa in might be a good idea, because watching Mendy last 2 matches, I don't know any of this for sure. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not close to the club. Mendy may be dealing with a knock. This is so out of the ordinary for him that there has to be a reason behind it. And my first suspicion is, maybe he's dealing with some kind of injury.
My take is I think we keep Mendy starting until AFCON. We sort of, as planned, have him go off and play for Senegal, bring Kepa in. That's kind of what we've been planning for. And then evaluate his performance with Senegal and see if some time and some recharge away from the team, what that does to like his demeanor. And then like you said, Matt, you have a little bit of a competition for number one keeper once that competition is over. But I haven't seen enough to warrant him losing the spot yet, just because of his performances throughout the year that have gotten us to be top of the league. I think he did a lot for us. And this is just a little bit too quick of a trigger on pulling a spot from somebody who I think thoroughly has deserved it.
So I'll just throw this out there real quick. Yes, no. If he has a similar performance in the Champions League against Zenit that we saw against West Ham and also Watford, are you pulling the trigger and having Kepa start against Leeds?
Yes.
Probably, but I actually like Collins' idea of starting Kepa in non-league games. Some of them, especially Zenit, where there's not too much on the line. We've already kind of qualified for the next stage. I like that idea a little bit better, just where it's a little less like you're losing your job and a little bit more like team strategy in quotations. So, but if they do start Mendy and he has sort of a goal conceding error, then I think it might be time to give him a rest, give him a break, let him, think about his mistakes, go to your room a little bit. No, just joking around, obviously, but no, just give him a bit of a break. And we have a super capable number two. So Kepa's looked good when he's been between the sticks for us. So I can't complain with that option either.
Matt, what about you?
I mean, personally, I start Kepa against Zenit, but I think
in your scenario,
in my scenario, absolutely. Like, have him going against Leeds. I mean, realistically, again, it's December. We've obviously seen what's happened in the first few days of December. But at the same time, I agree. I do think Mendy has a knock. He kind of took a beating in that Watford game, and I don't think he's really 100%. I think he's just kind of playing through some things. So I think you give him a rest. You let Kepa get his opportunity. He hasn't done anything to lose like a number one spot as a goalkeeper. Mendy has just been better. Like, it's kind of how I look at it. I don't think Kepa has played bad for us at all this year. So I think that he's earned the opportunity. I think that he is more than capable of going into a game like that and just being able to hold his own and provide for us. So I would say if Mendy does have another shaky performance, I say, yeah, you go to Kepa.
And the more we talk about it, the more you mention it, Matt. With Mendy possibly having a knock, it would not surprise me if he does. The club recently found out via Tuchel has been withholding on Jorginho carrying a knock for the last 3-4 matches. So they may be not disclosing something in regards to Mendy, but let's get to that midfield with Jorginho. He's had 2 stinkers in the last 3 matches he's played in. Midfield with injuries to Kante and Kovacic, kind of looks in shambles, especially against Watford, where they were exposed against Watford. With Kante and Kova out for the foreseeable future and Jorginho carrying a knock, what do you guys do in that midfield?
I think you have to switch formation. You need 3 in the midfield. That's the only thing that makes sense. Watford is a perfect example of that. They bodied our midfield. It wasn't even close. You have 2 players. RLC is not one to distribute. He doesn't play that defensive midfielder role. He's more of an attacking midfielder. Then you have Saul. I honestly, I don't even know if he knows that he's playing in the Premier League right now. Like, that's how bad he's been. It seems like the game is passing him by and he is just lost, doesn't know what's going on. The only other person from a midfield standpoint that I think you could put out there would be Ross. But again, he's also an attacking midfielder. However, he has played in the Premier League for a long time. He understands the game. He's able to catch up to it quick. I personally would like to see Ross over Saul, or literally anybody over Saul. But I think if you are going to run a partnership of Ross and RLC, let's say for Zenit or whatever, if you are going to run that, I think you need Ross to be the defensive midfielder. And I think you need RLC to go forward. Ross has been able to play that. He's able to do that role. He's strong enough. He understands the game. RLC is still, I think, getting used to it, but he's definitely more on the attacking side of things. So that's kind of how I would look at it. I do think the injuries have exposed a major flaw in our game, though, where everything runs through basically Jorginho or Kova. And Watford saw that, and they pressed the shit out of RLC and Saul and caused a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes. And for that first half of the game, we weren't even able to get out of our own third. To me, Watford had a perfect game plan, and Tuchel needs to be able to adjust to that, considering what he has right now as far as depth at midfield.
I'll jump in on that. I think I really like your three midfielder idea, Matt. We did that a couple of games ago, maybe a month or so ago, where instead of having three up top, we had more of a two strikers up top with three mid and then two wing backs and three at the back. I think you have to kind of use Trev a little bit in that midfield role. He showed a little bit of it where there was a substitution at half in that first game, that Watford game, where Silva came in for Saul and then Trev moved up into a midfield role. I like that. I think Trev is physical, and I think he could play in this. Obviously, none of this is ideal. We want two of the best midfielders in the world to be playing in our midfield with Kova and Kante, but for now we don't have that option. So I think I think we explore Trev as a defensive mid with Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Jorginho on either side of them, and then build up from there. The other thing I was going to say, Collins, that gets overlooked, not overlooked, but Chills being out just definitely hurts our midfielding and defending as well. And we mentioned that Rudy doesn't look like the same player when Chills isn't out there, and that when he's asked to do a little bit more work when Alonso's out there, he's just definitely not the same defender. And he ended up getting nutmegged in the Watford game, which led to the goal. So definitely not his best performances out there either. But that's how I would temporarily solve the problem. Is Trev and then three midfielders to just kind of shore things up a little bit more, create some distribution with our wing backs going up, and then attacking from there. The other player I think could potentially service in that midfield role would be Hudson Odoi, but it definitely wouldn't be his primary or best position. But we're talking strategy to fill a gap here. So I think he could do it. I think he's serviceable in a sort of a defensive mid role to distribute, even though I know he wants to run.
I think the reason why the midfield, especially against Watford, did not work, and a little bit against West Ham, is that they're all the ones that we have available are all very similar players, with the exception of Jorginho being available. Ross is an attacking midfielder. RLC, despite his size, is an attacking midfielder. Saul honestly should be playing as an attacking midfielder. He is not a Premier League holding midfielder. So between those three, who is going to be that holding mid? Who's going to be the pivot between the defense and the attack? Jorginho is great at that, despite what Matt thinks. Even if he has to back pass, he's the one dictating exactly where we're going. Kova does a great job of that. Kante has been playing up this year, so he's not really involved in that. So without Jorginho or Kova, who do you have in that pivot role? I don't think that you necessarily need to change formation. I think we have an abundance of center backs. And I think, honestly, your smartest and best distributor back there is Thiago Silva. I think Thiago Silva can play that pivot alongside a Ross Barkley, an RLC, something like that. Or as we saw, Trev did a fine job of that for 10 minutes the other day. But I think, honestly, you need to scrap playing the three midfielders that you have left in Saul, Barkley, and RLC. You can't play two of them together. Any combination of those two. You need to bring in an outside, either defender, move an attacker back, something, and it needs to change quickly. And it's, this is the first real time that Tuchel has been questioned on his tactics. And it's going to be interesting to see how stubborn he is or how open to change he is in this situation. So, gun to your head here, who are you using who's healthy as your two or three, as you guys mentioned, midfielders?
I would say I would go to three. I would go to three midfielders. Just based on the last two games, and obviously, team scout, they see what works. If you switch up the formation, you switch up the midfield, and you start bossing the midfield a little bit more. I think, maybe Zenit, you use that as an experimental game. I think maybe you try running, I would say, and I'm going to go out on a very tall limb and say this. I think you run Saul. I think you run Ross. And then I think you run Trev. Because as much as Saul has not been playing to the standards that we expect out of him, he did some positive things, at least in the Watford match. I thought he did some positive things on the attacking side of the ball, not necessarily the defensive. I mean, his yellow card was honestly a crock of shit, especially that early in the game, considering there were worse fouls that happened after. But anyways, I think you can use that because then that forces him to play a lot more hesitant for the rest of the match. But I think if you're going to try and make his lone move work, you give him a trot out in a game that doesn't have a lot of merit, a lot of importance to us. And I think that's the Champions League game. You get him acclimated to a situation that he's familiar with. He's played in the Champions League with Atletico. He knows he's familiar with that. And I think you give RLC a break. I think he's been playing a lot. I think he needs a bit of a breather. And to kind of touch on something else, I think a lot of people need a break. Our team just looks mentally exhausted at this point. But that's a separate conversation. So yeah, I would go Trev, Ross, Saul.
Man, you're not very good at the gun to your head game.
No. I'm hoping I can talk somebody's ear off and that'll save me.
Is Jorginho available in this situation or not?
Yes.
All right, because if Jorginho is playing, I'm playing him, Loftus-Cheek, and Trev, like I alluded to in my points. If he's not, something I was thinking about as someone else was talking was Reece James is another player who could potentially be serviceable as a pivot, as someone who kind of is a game manager. And we have a backup there with Dave, where we've got his position kind of covered in a pinch, and then Reece could play inward as somewhat of a defensive mid. So I don't hate that idea too.
And me, I'm going Silva and Ross the Boss. I don't know why he's been frozen out over the last couple matches, but his energy against Zenit should lead to good things, hopefully. But let's make our way even further up the pitch here. Let's talk about our forwards, specifically Big Rom, Lukaku. He is still, let's see, without a goal since before Malmo, when he went out injured. Another kind of lackluster performance here against West Ham. What do you guys make of Big Rom's return?
Collins, this is your topic. No, you can kick us off, man. This is your topic, so go ahead.
I think he's a world-class striker. I just think he's being, not utilized correctly. I think the big problem here is you see when Havertz is in, you see when Werner's in, we are crossing the ball 8 million times and a half. And then you see Rom come on for the last 30 minutes, and all we're doing is hold up play, which doesn't exactly play to the strengths of this team. But, for all we know, that could be because he's returning from injury. They want to, kind of limit his load. But at the same time, that we were seeing that earlier in the season too. So I think right now, honestly, with the way the team is playing, we look more fluid with Havertz up top or with Timo Werner up top. I just wish we would change tactics when Rom comes on, because he's a much more clinical finisher than either of those two.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that note. I don't know why you're spot on, Collins. It's everything changes when he comes on the pitch, and I don't get it. And we feel stale, and it's a weird one for me. I'm still holding out hope that, like, if and when Pulisic is featured in most matches and playing 60 minutes a match, that a link up with him could be really good, or a link up with Zia could be really good. But yeah, for whatever reason, our style sort of just changes, and I don't like it. And so when I watch us play with him on the pitch, I generally don't like it. I don't know if that's his fault or not. I really don't. You talked about Tuchel's comments about how we sort of want to use him as a hold-up player, and he's kind of gone on record as saying that that's not really his style. But yeah, Kai gets 2 or 3 headed looks a match, and other people get balls kind of rolled to them in the box where they get a shot on goal. And I want Lukaku to be at the end of it, and I don't think it's his fault that he's not getting those opportunities. He works hard, he runs hard, he's given what he's got. So I think we just need to figure it out. He's not a lost cause. Like you said, he's a clinical striker. He's one of the best in the world. So I have hope, but I am definitely mentally trending towards the negative, because as much hope as I can have, it doesn't matter if I don't see it on the pitch. If I continue to watch match after match and I don't see him score goals, I don't see him be involved in goals, be utilized in positive ways, then it doesn't matter. So, man, I hope so. That's all I can say.
It's frustrating. That's about all I can say. It's Collins. It's kind of Collins Parks. It's kind of like what we talked about with the midfield. Like, you have 2 people that say that play the same thing. Like, where's that difference in things? And you have Rom, who is definitely a much different player than Kai, right? So things kind of have to change. However, in this system, with the attacking that we have, there is no reason for things to change. I personally think Kai might be a little bit better link-up player, and Rom is definitely a much bigger presence as far as hold-up play goes. I get that, but I think Tuchel is taking it to the extreme in that regard, and I don't like it, because if you look at it, Rom's at his best when he's just kind of free-flowing and sprinting, going kind of one-on-one or 1v2. Like, that's where he shines. That's where he thrives. And, it kind of brings me back to a Zlatan quote when he was asked to do a tryout with Arsenal, and his response was, "You don't test drive a Ferrari." To me, that's kind of what it seems like. Like, you know what you're getting with Rom. let him go, let him just body everybody, let him be the striker that he wants to be. You have Kai in right now as a makeshift number 9. That's all he is. You just have him there because Timo and Ram are out. Timo has not proven himself to be a striker, at least in the Premier League. More of a left wing. Put Ram up there. Like, if you're managing his minutes, sure. But I think he's been back. He's been back for almost 2 weeks now, or at least been available for almost 2 weeks. I think he's ready. Throw him out there, see what he does, and keep the tactics the same. Let him link up with players. Let him go at defenders. I don't like what I'm seeing when Ram's on the pitch, and that's not any fault of his own.
And, this isn't exactly something we can analyze. It's more of a gut feel here, but I got to ask the question because we all know it as Chelsea fans. Is that number 9 cursed?
No.
Can I read you some players who have worn that jersey?
It's hard to argue with it.
Are we saying the actual number 9 or a number with 9 in it?
Kit number 9. Radamel Falcao, Franco De Santo, Steve Sidwell, Gonzalo Higuain, Murata, Fernando Torres. It's not a pretty list since Roman has taken over.
It's a little cursed.
I mean, Diego Costa did have 19, so I mean it's kind of close.
We're kind of like NFL kickers in Minnesota. You get there and then you forget how to learn how to kick. So
now, Parks, I changing the subject here. You did bring up Pulisic. How do we feel about his substitution this week? I love anytime Christian comes on, but I don't think he was the correct sub at the time. What do you think?
Who would you have preferred?
Hadn't really thought that far. I just know I didn't like it.
I'm kind of with you. I like when Christian comes on, and I think he's generally positive when he comes on. When he come on, 72. So yeah, he had some time to make an impact. I came on for Alonso, but I don't know if you can show me someone better, great. But I think I was generally okay with it.
So I guess to clarify why I was against it is they immediately moved Cho back to the left wing back and let Christian play up, if I remember correctly. Cho had looked pretty good on the wing. He's, this game, the midfield was congested. The middle of the park was congested. This game was about playing out wide. The more wide you can get, the better chances you would have. Cho gave us that. Pulisic likes to come in. Pulisic is a central player. And to have Christian take over as a winger there, I thought was the wrong move. So I guess that's why I was against the move.
I think it all changes when you bring on Ram. Right? We just talked about it. The whole dynamic changes. It basically makes Ram relatively useless. Honestly, that's kind of how I feel. You bring in Christian, it wasn't really a very end-to-end game yet. It wasn't extremely open at the end. It was still kind of pretty tactical. And then you need Christian to also track back to help Cho. Again, Parker, to your point, who else do you bring on? At that point, it's tough. I mean, who else has played that left wing back position before? Can't bring on Ross. I don't think Sarr was even featured. Do you bring on Dave for a little bit, knowing that you have other matches coming up? I don't envy Thomas Tuchel right now. It's a tough job. But I mean, you do the best with what you got, and I think I still don't think 70 coming in at the 72nd minute is enough time for Christian to have an impact in a game like that. In a derby game where it's been back and forth and chaos, I don't think that's a game that Christian really does well in, personally. But
yeah, Collins, I wouldn't have minded if Christian kind of came in and played left wing back and kept Cho. I don't know if this is how he would feel, but I feel like Hudson-Odoi would feel like he's getting relegated back to left wing back in his mind. And if I was him, I would probably be upset. Someone else comes in, I don't get subbed off, but I have to go kind of cover the hole and do the defensive cleanup work. And I've been positive in an attacking sense. So I think it's only human nature to kind of look at that and be at least a little bit upset. So I wouldn't have minded Christian being that left wing back. Keep Hudson-Odoi where he's at and roll the dice.
So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is I thought Tuchel's tactics, again, at least substitutions were poor. Callum Hudson-Odoi only came on in the 64th. He'd only been in that left wing role for 8 minutes after he replaced Ziyech. Honestly, I thought Ziyech looked like he still had a lot of energy. And if you're going to bring on Rom anyways, why not have a guy who can feed him, who he has a relationship with, who's got good chemistry with? Ziyech, six goals or assists in his last 8 matches. As much as the fan base wants to tear him apart, the guy is almost carrying the offense along with Mason Mount at this point. And again, if he still had energy, I don't understand the substitution. I think I'd rather take off Mount, who at that point looked like he had, tired legs. I think Cho for Mount would have been a good move. And then, maybe you bring on Pulisic later in the match when Ziyech wears down. But I mean, this is now 2, maybe 3 matches if you count Man U, where, at least in my mind, Tuchel's being outcoached. And for the world-class manager that he is, I'd like to see a change. I'd like to see an adjustment.
I was just gonna say revisionist history is hard when we look back at the subs, but you're right, man. It's getting to be a pattern, and no one likes to see patterns when they're trending in the wrong way. So I don't disagree with your take. And just a comment, I thought Ziyech has looked like one of our best players in the past 2 matches. So he definitely is trending up, and I think he's been one of the more positive people. So Mace gave a lot in the West Ham game, and I thought Ziyech looked good. So I would have done the same.
It's one of those things with Tuchel. It kind of comes with his reputation. If you look at his last 2 stints coaching, Dortmund and PSG, he's kind of had some rougher falling outs, especially with ownership and things like that, and especially players like not playing to his style, kind of very Mourinho-esque. Maybe this is the first crack in the armor that we're starting to see. Obviously, it's been well documented. The longevity of a Chelsea manager is not great. Maybe this is the first sign of it. Granted, it's tough to say that considering this is our first real rough patch, and we're talking about 2 bad games over basically the course of a year. I think we also have to keep that in context. We're talking about 2 bad games over his 52 or 53 total matches, where we're starting to question things. So maybe we're being harsh on him, possibly, but at the same time, I do think that there are things that are obvious that need some adjustment. And I think his nature and being as at least stubborn as reports have made him out to be with past managerial experience, it might be the first showing of that.
So we posted a poll on our Twitter and I just want to preface this by saying this is only coming up because we are trained as Chelsea fans to never fall in love with a manager, whether it be Mourinho or whether it be Luis Felipe Scolari. So if December goes how December goes for Chelsea, drop a ton of points, kind of limp into January. Is Tuchel safe?
Yes.
I think he's safe. I think he's safe until he either, we have to see how his year, I think he's going to get the year to see what trophies he brings in. Because I think an FA Cup could potentially save him. An FA Cup in a top 4 in the league saves him, or something like that. You can run a couple of scenarios like that. So sort of depends on how many points he drops. If he dropped all of the points, then yeah, I think he gets the axe. I think he would deserve the axe at that point, considering the fixtures in December aren't all against Man City or Liverpool. So yeah, if he drops all the points, sure, probably deserves it. But that the one thing I was just funny thinking in my head, we have had 2 tough games. We've all kind of acknowledged it. We did win one of those games, which doesn't even feel like it's fair. We actually grinded out a win, and it was ugly, but we still won the game. We've said it before. I've said it before. That's what happens when you're somewhat of a spoiled Chelsea fan, when just winning isn't good enough, when winning 5-2 should have been 10-2, you're a little bit upset. So I have to laugh at myself as a fan when it definitely felt like we lost both of those games, and we still took 3 out of 6 points. So I think he stays, Collins, unless something catastrophic happens. I think he stays into January.
Yeah, I think as long as he stays in the top 3, we're good, because there's quite the gap to that 4th place. Currently West Ham. So I think as long as he's there, as long as he's in that top 3, I think he's safe. But I mean, it's scary that it's being talked about at all, which again is my fault, but it is what it is.
One additional thing, we're still in the Champions League, so it comes to the question: Champions League or Premier League? Which one do you go after? If we are talking about Tuchel in this position where, we'll see where he's at the end of the year. If he's still in the Champions League and he's made it to, the round of 8, like how do we approach that? Is that good enough for Chelsea if he keeps progressing? Like is making the round of 16 good enough to save him, even if we were to run into the situation of dropping points in the Premier League, but also progressing in the FA Cup?
It's hard to get into the mind of Roman Abramovich, but I feel like this season, coming off of the season we had last year with so many young guys and being as dominant as we were in the Champions League, I feel like Roman wants both Premier League and Champions League. And if not the Premier League, second, couple points off. Third might be okay if it's a 5-point gap, something like that. But if you're double digits, that might spell trouble.
And weirdly enough, it feels weird even saying this, but I think if we were to focus on the Champions League, I almost think that's easier for us to attain than winning the league this year. It sounds so silly saying that, but it's a tournament. It's knockout tournament play instead of grindy league play, where there's way more variables in the Premier League. There's teams that get to rest all week and then play you versus playing midweek and everything that we have to face as Chelsea. So I almost think if we were to just put all of our eggs in the Champions League basket, that would be more attainable than putting all of our eggs in the Premier League basket and winning that.
Absolutely. Well, 100% agree. But unfortunately, it's just the world we're in, the climate at Chelsea. You're in a competition, you got to win it. But I can certainly see the point. It definitely is, I would say, easier to win the Champions League if that's what you're committed to. But this has been kind of a negative pod. I do want to end it on a positive note here. Chelsea's women's team win the Women's FA Cup final this morning here in the States, but evening over in England, 3-0, Fran Kirby and Sam Kerr twice on the score sheet against Arsenal. So London's blue, England's blue. Love it. Did you guys get a chance to watch the game? Any reaction?
I did not, unfortunately. I was kind of working on demoing some stuff at the house, but no, I did not get a chance to watch it, but I did watch the UEFA ceremony and everything. Club of the year, Chelsea, getting it done on the men's and women's side, and you can't ask for much more than that. I think we had 11 total people nominated for the club, which was, I think, the highest by about three players. So that just speaks volumes to our club on both ends. How well we develop, how well we recruit and things like that. So I'm very happy to see the women do well.
I didn't get to catch the match either. I was actually traveling from a family event back home in Wisconsin, so I was on a plane in the airports today. But I have to give a shout out to the Chelsea Mic'd Up podcast, because before I started listening to that this year, I didn't pay much attention to the women's team. The women's game is growing a lot in the United States, but still isn't sort of on that level of popularity and coverage and attention in the United States. Definitely growing with some of the women's national team players making a big splash and being some of the best females in the world, which is awesome to see. But the Mic'd Up podcast kind of covers the games, and I've gotten to hear these names over and over and over again. And Fran Kirby, Sam Kerr, Penella Harder, like, you hear them getting talked about, and Reece James's sister plays for them as well. So it's cool, and I can see me starting to follow the results more and more, and hopefully be able to catch more and more games as time goes on. But I think it's a cool sort of club mentality that they've embodied as well, and they're definitely one of the best teams in the world, and they definitely represent Chelsea well, and they've been phenomenal this year. So they're having an outstanding season, and this was a great win, and dominant win at that.
And I was lucky enough to watch the game. There's no Packer game this week, so there's a lot of trying to find stuff to watch, and I happened to see on ESPN Plus that the match was on, which is surprising because we don't get a lot of WSL here in the States. Handful of matches, so it was a good chance to watch them play. And I was watching with my wife Nicole, and a couple times she's like, "Man, I feel so bad for Arsenal. They just have to deal with attack after attack after attack, like this Kirby and Kerr just all over the place." I'm like, yeah, it's probably two of the best strikers in the world right there. It's really something. So
and honestly, and to be fair, it is Arsenal. So I mean, it's on both ends of the spectrum.
I think Arsenal's females could beat their males team at this stage, though. They are quite the dominant force in the WSL.
They are, and I can't remember that midfielder they have. Was she the Ballon d'Or winner? I can't remember, but anyways.
No, it was I think a striker midfielder from Barca.
Oh, okay, then she was like runner up or something like that.
Yeah,
but, our Arsenal women very, very good. So it was a good win for Chelsea today. Parker, you did mention the Mic'd Up podcast. Matt and I had the pleasure of going to the Chelsea Coming to America this week, along with the Champions League trophy. Very cool event. Brandon London from the Mic'd Up podcast was the MC. They brought the Champions League trophy, brought Torre Andre Flo, as we've touched on a little bit in previous pods here. But I just want to give a shout out to the Milwaukee Blues and to Chelsea in America. That was a great event, especially coming to our little town here of Milwaukee. Felt very honored. I won an N'Golo Kante signed shirt, which was also cool. So I'll give him that. But if you are listening out east, I believe the next two stops are New York and Philadelphia. So please go onto the Fifth Stand app, register for your local chapter, and check it out. It's definitely almost once in a lifetime. Never going to get that close to the Champions League trophy. So very, very, very cool event.
And Parker, you were definitely with us in spirit. So we it wasn't feasible at the time for you to get there. So we obviously made sure to hook you up with whatever we could. But yeah, it was a great time.
Well, thank you, and cheers to you boys for doing that. But it leads us into a nice, lovely point. Nick at the MKE Blues, I believe he gave us a flag or a banner that we're going to be giving out here. So details are on our Twitter on how to enter. We're hoping people can share the link and tag a friend, and then hashtag one of your favorite Chelsea memories or moments that sticks out with you. And so please do so, enter, and we'll draw a winner at random, and be able to ship that out. So thank you to the MKE Blues for that lovely gift. And then we want to reward one of our listeners for doing that. So Collins, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're drawing that on Tuesday night. Is that right?
Yep, that'll be on Tuesday. As Parker said, go to our Twitter at Flag Down Pod. All you gotta do is we have the post pinned. All you gotta do is give us a follow, retweet, as Parker said, and then tag a friend in it. Then again, we'll draw that on Tuesday. Well, we're up against the hour here, boys. So
Collins, real quick. One other thing that I wanted to celebrate was the fact that Christian played the entire Watford match and didn't get injured.
Hooray!
To me, that is a big victory. So that's the only other thing I wanted to add to it.
We celebrate that.
Yes, absolutely. I'll drink to that. That's a good one. All right. Well, on 2 or 3 happy notes there, after turning around a negative pod, we are out for the week. Expect a pod after dark dropping later in the week here. But as always, you can find us on social at Flag Down Pod. You can follow us, in terms of listening, basically on anywhere where you listen to your podcasts: Anchor, Google, Spotify, Apple, etc. Search Flag Stays Down. Boys, it's been a pleasure, and we'll chat again hopefully after picking up some points this week.
Picking up points, securing top spot in the Champions League. That's what we all want to do, baby. Let's get it.
Always looking forward to it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.